Good morning, everyone. It is Rollie, and welcome to another Chatting with Wisdom. And today I am here with Lisa Drennon, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I forgot to ask. So Lisa Drennon was born and raised in Rochester, New York, a loyal wife, mom, and friend. She loves to volunteer and help everywhere she is needed. She started her virtual coaching business as a certified Oola life coach and certified Aroma freedom practitioner, and has helped hundreds of women surrender self-sabotage that keeps them stuck in fear so that they can 10 times their life. Lisa's avid reader, loves to journal and drink a nice Australian or South American Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. When she is not writing, she can be found wandering through through nature or baking up some of her favorite paleo desserts. She currently lives in Rochester with her husband, son, and fur baby, who thinks she's human. And so one of the things that Lisa has to offer is a 90-minute blueprint mastermind strategy call where you can discover the keys to surrender self-sabotage, release fear, and transform your beliefs to crush your SMART goals in goals and 10 times your life. So welcome, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
This is really great. And so I love the topic that you chose. And so surrendering self-sabotage that keeps you stuck in fear. We have so many women that do that. And the self-sabotage is one of those things that things are going really nice and smooth, and then we just kind of fall off the wagon, or we stop doing something, or we purposely try and change whatever it is that's going on. And so it makes us really, we really struggle with that. And I think that the biggest part is that fear. So tell me a little bit more.
I lost you.
Was that me or you? I don't even know.
I don't know. I usually get a little message on the bottom that says it's me. I didn't get a message. So.
And I didn't either. So I'm like, okay, she's frozen. Is it me? So I have no idea whether or not. So I have no idea. So I'm going to repeat what it is that I was just saying.
Yeah, technology at its best. It's been like this all week, right?
And it's Mercury retrograde, and we're Mercury retrograde until I think mid October is when we're done with Mercury retrograde. So I saw a meme the other day that said, actually, I guess it probably was yesterday, because Monday we had no Facebook. So, but it was like somebody had posted Mercury retrograde 1, Zuckerberg 0.
I love that. So true. So true.
It definitely is. Okay. So I was talking about, and again, I apologize if other people heard me and didn't hear, but we were talking about the surrendering self-sabotage. And I was just saying how much that it really is something that impacts women, at least in my community. And so we have women that are constantly saying, okay, well, I've got this goal, I've got this plan, I'm moving forward, everything's really good. And then all of a sudden you fall off the wagon, and then you just kind of keep going. And it just seems to be that biggest thing. And one of the things that I really love about the topic that you have is that you talk about it being stuck in fear. And so then we just don't try. We just don't kind of move forward. Right. So do you want to tell me a little bit more about your experiences or that in particular?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, it's funny because we're only born with two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. And all other fears are learned and can be unlearned. But we don't realize that because we are fearful people. I mean, we see things and our thoughts immediately process it to, oh, that's danger, I'm scared. And then that feeling becomes your action, which is going to produce a result. And I think what happens, especially with entrepreneurs, with anyone who's trying to accomplish a goal, whether it be, just something as simple as cleaning their house or, initiating, paying their bills, creating a budget. It's almost like your body gets paralyzed because your thoughts go back. Your subconscious kind of reveals its fear and tells you, oh, well, you're going to sit down and write your budget. You're going to sit down and try to do this. Well, you know what happened last time. And we basically want to do it. And our mind says, let's do it. Our heart might say, let's do this. But there's that conflict. And we just keep getting in this cycle. For me, it started way back when. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I was molested as a little girl. By the time I was 15, my self-esteem was so low. And I didn't really have a childhood. And I was fearful of a lot of things. I was taught to be afraid of people. Don't go outside after dark because, we lived in a really rough area, and we grew up poor, and there was a bar down the street. So often drunks would come by, and, I was like 6, 7 years old. And I remember we got locked out of the house. My brothers and I got locked out of the house one night, and we had to hide on the porch while this person walked by. So I was always very afraid of like going outside at night and doing these certain things. And I would just create these fears in me from what my environment, the worldview that I was taught. And I didn't want to be fearful. I wanted to be brave. So I would try to do things to make myself brave, but then I would pull back. Nope, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to do it. And I remember getting really angry and just being a very angry person. And I wanted to exceed in whatever I did. So being an avid reader, I read a lot. I studied a lot. In school, I loved challenges. So I would join these different challenges. And I remember, we're going to date myself, back in the 80s when shorthand was still very active. I loved shorthand, and I was really good at it. So my teacher entered me into a contest, and I was all excited. There was going to be over 300 people. It was going to be countywide. And I was a little nervous, but I practiced, and I'm like, I'm going to do my best. And it was a cash award, which, being poor, you want to get cash awards, right? So I went, and I remember the guy I was dating at the time, very narcissist, gaslighting. He's like, well, you're not going to win. Why are you even wasting your time doing it? And it made me so angry. I'm like, I am so going to win. I'm going to prove you wrong. So I actually won. And I remember getting called when they called my name for first place. I was angry. And I walked up to the front of the room to accept the award. And I'll never forget the people's look on the face. They were like, okay, you just won a $300 cash award. Like, why are you upset? Like, why are you mad? And I was just like grunting, like, thanks. And I was like literally totally self-sabotaged the moment, not enjoying it, not like I wanted to do that. And I was so angry about it, but I couldn't appreciate what I had accomplished. And, instead of like doing the bragging rights, I withdrew inside of myself and became more and more angry and didn't really understand why. So I turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms. By the time I was 17, I was pregnant 3 times. 2 of those ended in abortion, which I did not want. I was drugged, convinced that, it wasn't a life. And it really affected me because I grew up believing differently. So there was this conflict. So to mask that hurt and that pain, that shame and that guilt, that fear of people knowing who I was, I turned into a people pleaser. And I would just volunteer, do whatever you wanted. I want you to like me. Here I am. How can I help you? And I was miserable. And every time I would try to heal, being in therapy and reading all kinds of books, like what's the root cause of my anger? I would just go deeper into a depression. I would eat more. I would drink more. I would shop more. I had an addiction to shopping. And so my finances started getting out of control. And it's like, okay, stop it. You need to stop it. And then I would make a written plan. And then I would self-sabotage my efforts as soon as I had a trigger, not knowing this until I'm 53 years old right now. It wasn't until I was 44 that I realized that this childhood memories, these things that I experienced had kept me in this cycle of fear and self-sabotaging my efforts. So even though a strong-willed part of me wanted to move forward, I was pulled back. And I used to say all the time, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. Why can't I get forward? Why am I overwhelmed? Why do I keep overeating, over drinking, overspending? And until 2013, I couldn't figure it out. The first time I was reading a book. I read every single book there was on anger. And I was just like, what is this anger? And where does it come from? And what are my thoughts? And what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? So anger masks whatever you're afraid of, right? Whatever that feeling is. So what was I afraid of? And when I realized it on my healing journey, I was afraid that if people knew what I did, I would be like the black sheep. I would be, cast out. People would think that, here I am, a Christian. I was saved in 1979. And oh, what kind of a Christian are you? You're such a hypocrite. Like your heart's not in the right, I just had a laundry list of what people were going to think about me. And there's no way that I was ever going to tell. I wrote my book, Forgiving the Girl Inside, Finding Balance, Freedom, and Fun in Your Life. The first chapter is called I Swore I Would Never Tell, because I never would. I didn't tell anyone, and it just ate me up. And the first time I shared my story was in August of 20. And as a certified Oola life coach, we go through a process called Ready, Set, Go. And it is an amazing, simple technique that helps you work through blockers. There's 7 blockers. Fear, self-sabotage are 2 of them. And you basically look at it and examine, like, what's going to happen if I work through this? What's going to happen if I tell people that I did this horrific thing? What's going to happen if I don't? And my choices were like, I can continue living and self-sabotaging myself and gaining weight and overeating and not sleeping properly and not taking care of me and hiding behind this mask. Or I can share it, and whatever people say, they say, and just be ready for those comments. So I actually wrote out what people would say if they found out, and it's such a controversial topic. So there's going to be both sides. And how do you deal with that? Because then, is that a trigger point for you? Are you going to go back into self-sabotaging because somebody doesn't support you, somebody does support you? And whatever I expected didn't happen. People were very supportive on both sides.
Yeah.
And because I'm on both sides, it really sees a different perspective. So all these thoughts of self-sabotage and being in fear were in my head. Were literally in my head. My thoughts determined my actions, determined my feelings, determined my actions, determined the outcome. And we can't control circumstances, but we can certainly control how we respond to them. And when you can captivate your thoughts, if thoughts were a person and came knocking on your door, would you let them in?
Yeah.
And when I stop and tell myself that, what is my why? What do I really want? What's my heart telling me? When I know I'm doing something right, I get this pressing on my heart and I can't help. I'm so passionate about it. I have to go after it. And when it's not right, I literally get a pain in my brain. Across my forehead, I get this pain. And then the thoughts start, the lies start coming through, oh, they're going to say this, so I've turned to prayer. I'm like, okay, Lord, just get me through this. And, I've actually gotten in the habit of, if I'm going to say something and I'm nervous about it, and I'm not 100% sure where the feeling's coming from, and I don't want to self-sabotage, I don't want to start an argument, I don't want to do certain things, I'm like, okay, if this isn't something I'm supposed to share, just let something happen. And it'll just, Facebook will come up with a thing that said, sorry, we're having a problem right now. And it'll erase my message. I'm like, oh, okay. I wasn't ready to share that message yet.
And I love that, right? Because there's signs all around, and no matter what your belief system is that there is still always this higher being or this higher power or this higher self that is there to be able to help guide us, right? So we talk in our culture, we talk about the feathers. So like if you come across a feather, it's a message from above that's actually, and so pay attention to what you were thinking about, pay attention to what, who you were around, what was going on, and just kind of pay attention because there's a message there. And so it's just really interesting how these different things, like you said, Facebook, like it's technology, it just happens, but it was like in that specific moment at that specific time. And this is what it is that was happening. So it's really interesting how those things happen. And as you were sharing your story is so similar to a lot of people that I've worked with and that I do work with, and some similarities to myself as well. And so it's really, we always think that we're isolated and that it's our problem and that there's nobody else in the world that has experienced it. Of course, there's nobody in the world who has experienced exactly everything that we've had, but those feelings there's a lots of similarities. And so when we do our group coaching call, Um, that's one of the things that I find is that we have one person who's talking about something, and there's like this whole theme of like Me Too, right? So no matter what
Mm-hmm.
it is that's happening. So like I know that the hashtag Me Too is about sexual assault. However, there is like there's that Me Too, like oh, I can relate. I can relate. Yes. So my story is not the exact same. However, my feelings, everything, that underlying whole part of things is very similar, and being able to have that community of being able to understand that we're not alone, and that there's um, so many others that are in that same scenario and having those internal struggles. So like you talked about, like, well, I can't share my secret, and the very first chapter is sharing my secret. And the response is and like you said, the response was like, oh, okay, this is great, this is wonderful. And there's like even the people who are completely against abortion specifically were there to still support you in some way about how difficult it might have been, or whatever, without having that condemning. And we're our worst critic, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that have the worst things to say about what it is that's going on and what it is that's happening. And when we do that, that, well, what if? Right. So even yesterday, I had a session with a client she was struggling with that internal, like, okay, how do I fix this? I don't know what it is that I need to be doing. And again, that people pleaser of like, okay, well, I need to fix it. There's a problem and I need to fix it. And so then when we went through the two sides of it, is like, hey, so, but why? But why? Right. So like that was constantly the question, like, so why does it matter? Why is that so important to you? And then was able to actually identify, okay, so this is what's going on, this is what's happening, this is like that underlying value, or this is a belief system that's been imposed on me. And so you've got these two different ways of being able to try and figure it out. And then it's about being able to stop that people pleasing, and stopping, and that people pleasing is self-sabotage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like that is one of the things that we do to be able to self-sabotage. And for those of us who are people pleasers, know how challenging it is to say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no is a complete sentence. However, we really struggle with that, don't we?
It is absolutely challenging. I just want to speak about your analogy of the feather, because that is so, the eagle and the dove are very important to me. And, that flight, that feather represents flight and freedom. And one of the, with the Aroma Freedom sessions that I do with my clients, there's a lot of visualization that you go through. And I had a visualization of a bird cage. And, I was that bird, and this beautiful bird stuck in the cage. The door was opened, but I was so petrified of coming out, so fearful of being free and flying and speaking my voice, because I was told not to say certain things growing up, and this conflict. And yeah, your beliefs, when they're formed, and then you don't really know what the truth is. And that too is a form of self-sabotage, because you're like, I'm going to do this because someone told me to do it, even though your intuition is telling you, no, don't do it. So I love that analogy of the feathers. We get feathers in our backyard all the time. And I always like marvel at the beauty of them, because they're each unique, and they are the power of the feather when a bird flies, and they just have that force to lift them to fly. So that sense of freedom, a freedom to fly. And the self-sabotage, people pleasing. Yeah. I learned to say no. When I was I have 3 kids. My youngest is 23 now. But when I was a young mom and they were growing up, I was constantly saying yes and spinning all these plates and just feeling so angry and overwhelmed, and I couldn't figure out why. And when you work with your clients and you ask, I call it 7 layers deep, why? What's the root cause? If you can get to the root cause of why you're self-sabotaging, why you turn to imposter syndrome, why your thoughts are so negative, and you were saying your worst critic. I had a conversation with a client yesterday, 30 minutes, they beat themselves up. I'm not good enough. They're better than me. Comparing yourself to others, not seeing your value or your worth, doing a job and not seeing the value of what you've completed, and just criticizing every single thing you did. You don't need to be perfect. And what you see as flaws, others are going to see as beauty. and just recognizing that you need to be your best cheerleader. You need to encourage yourself, because your inner child, your inner girl, like, forgiving the girl inside is huge, because we don't forgive ourselves. We extend forgiveness to others so much easier than we do ourselves, because we have this bar and we just and we keep raising the bar when we reach it. So that cycle of self-sabotage never starts unless you know your why, the root cause. And that's what happened to me, not even understanding it until I started giving thanks and being really grateful for what, like 10 things a day that you're grateful for and the reason why. That's when my heart started to change. And that's when I started understanding that it was okay to grieve. It was okay to cry. It was okay to process. It was okay to acknowledge the fact that I messed up. Okay, maybe I know at one point I was living paycheck to paycheck. I hated that cycle. I grew up with this money mindset. You have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. That's a really hard cycle to break, to think that you continuously have to borrow money in order to get ahead. And a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of different mindset coaches, money mindset coaches, and they're like, well, no, it's not borrowing, it's an investment. And just by changing the word, it's not a written budget, it's a system. It's a system to tell your money where to go. That totally changes that thought process of, oh, okay, I might not like budgets, because when I was a kid, my parents used to fight over the budget all the time. And my mom used to say you had to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. And my dad would complain that he was working as hard as he can. He has 2 jobs. He's working overtime. But then when you call it a system, let's put the system in place. Let's tell our money where to go. It's like, oh, okay, I like systems. Let's figure out this system. This is cool. This will be a challenge. And we'll give, and you almost like see those moving parts. It totally changes your perspective and how you're going to process something.
It really does. And I like language, right? So language is just one of those things. And so last week when we were talking with the guest last week, is one of the things I was talking about. And I said the word should. And so one of the things that I say all the time to my clients when they're saying it back to me, or like when they're talking, it's like, hey, so stop shitting on yourself. But yet, as we were having the conversation last week, it was just language, right? So it was just something that I was saying, and I wasn't even paying attention to the actual words that I was saying, and I was just getting my message out. But then I drew back into those childhood shoulds, because I try not to live in shoulds. It's like, I would like to, I'm choosing to. There's like lots of other words that you can use instead of should. And so, but it was just really interesting that throughout the conversation, and if we can shift the way that we think and the words that we use, it has such empowerment. So like you said, like using the word systems instead of budget and so on, right? So like there's just so many things that we can just, they're simple little things. They're hard, and they're not, and it's because it's that habit of stuck in the stuff that we normally do or that we have been doing for so long, or that we kind of fall back into those old patterns because we've been triggered by something or whatever. But being able to understand that, okay, that's where this is coming from. That's what it is that's happening. And one of the other things that you had said in the conversation is about noticing in your body, right? So you talked about like when it feels good, it's in your heart center. And when it's not, it's in your head. And so it's having that part of things, that having that change and that perspective and awareness of where it's coming from, that underlying root cause, because those are things that we don't do enough of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so easy to get caught up in your thinking, and it's so easy to get triggered, especially when you're going through social media, and then you see a post and you look at who posted it, and it's like, oh, and the jealousy, that a blocker of envy comes rearing its ugly head. And if you're not aware of that, all of a sudden it just kind of has a domino effect. And then whoever comes into your path, you're like snapping at them, or you shut down and you're like, oh, well, they got this. Someone had shared a post with me yesterday about someone who became a business strategist for this specific niche. And it was a group that I used to be in. And they were like, oh, I'm so, someone had congratulated them and said, but I'm so jelly. And I'm like, okay. And the person who shared it with me, I knew that they were upset about it because they wanted to be in that position, but it didn't work out and they ended up leaving. And I said, well, this post is from April. And they didn't even realize it. They just had come across it. It came up in their news feed, immediately shut them down. And I'm like, but that wasn't the path for you. And if you really wanted that, you can still do it. You don't need that person to do it. It wasn't in alignment with what you wanted to do. And I think that's what happens is we get stuck in self-sabotage as well when we connect with a mentor or a coach that's not 100% in alignment with us.
Yeah.
You know, we start working with them and then we start questioning things, but we're so afraid to move because we invested time and money. And now I know I need a coach or a mentor, but I don't want to invest time and money because I got burned over here. So I'm just going to go after all these freebies and hope I can figure it out. So we end up spinning our wheels. You know, a lot of my clients call it being on the hamster wheel because of this trust issue. And what they do is just spend time self-sabotaging their efforts. They never launch. They never get their dreams. They never put the goals in place to go after what they want because their thoughts keep them stuck in this place of fear and overwhelm and self-sabotage and envy. And it's really just processing each one and acknowledging it and saying like, yeah, that person did not follow through with what they said they were going to deliver. Here's what I got out of it. This was the good that came out of it.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned. And now this is what I need to do to implement it. This is what I really want to do. This is my why. And once you know your why and you know your niche and you got your mission, there's nothing that's going to stop you from going forward. You know, and especially when you connect with an awesome mentor like yourself and your coaching programs where you offer all this amazing wisdom. And, you know, wisdom is knowledge. It's the best thing that you can possibly have. And when you know it's in alignment with your heart, you're going to be so passionate about it. You're going to be unstoppable. And people get so stuck back here that they can't see that light. They can't see the tunnel. They just see, nope, not going to do it. So whatever you believe, you receive. If you believe you're overwhelmed, you're overwhelmed. You believe you're fearful, you're fearful. Just flip it. Play a different movie.
And it's just one. And so you were talking about like from that business perspective, but even with that personal perspective, right? So like we have for example, we have a new program. Well, it's not a new program, but like the doors have opened again for this course that I do, and it's called Sister Soul Medicine. And it's all about, and so the way that this program is designed is that if you've been in the program before, you get to come back again at no cost. So you come back in, you jump on the call, you go through the lessons again. And I had somebody say, okay, well, but then I guess that means that I didn't do it right. And it's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. You're coming from a different lens, right? So, and so we used the analogy yesterday of like the spiral staircase is that you're always coming at something from a different angle because you're not where you started. You're not at the bottom of the spiral. You're not either on the next step or you're on 2 steps up, whatever it is, that your perspective is just so much different based on what it is that you're doing. So when you're going through it again, then you're going to pick up different things that you need to be working on to be able to get yourself to the next level and to the next level and to the next level. And that's the reason why I've set it up that way, is that you get to jump back in. So we only allow 20 new people to come in. And but then everybody else gets to come in again. So you've got their experience, you've got their support, I was down at that bottom of that rail 2 years ago or whatever, that you've got that extra where you get to build and support each other and move forward. And it really is that part of like just being able to see it from that different perspective. And especially because one of the things that I work with is women that have experienced anxiety. Like that is the biggest part of who I work with. And where does anxiety come from? Fear. Right. So anxiety is that fear. So you've got the anger, or you've got the anxiety, like you've got the 2 different ways of being able to come from. And when you're having that experience of anxiety, is that it's because you're afraid of something. Right. So you're afraid of something happening or you're afraid of something not happening. Those are the 2 components that come from that part. And it's just so important for us to be able to take that step forward and to take it to that next level. So can you tell me a little bit more about what is it that you do? So like we've talked a lot about like what the the surrendering. And I know that you talked a little bit about your programs or services a little, but did you want to share a little bit more about what specifically that you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm energetic mindset mentor, business strategist. I have a signature program called SOAR, which is Seeking Our Authentic Route to Our Highest Potential. It's taking scripture systems, optimizing our content to authentically connect with our soulmate client and creating a rock solid mindset on a customized roadmap. So we look at your gifts and talents. We look at how you like to show up in the marketplace. There's so many different tools to implement what you have to share. And you have gifts and talents to share with everyone. You have a specific niche. We're each given this little territory in which we're going to work with people to help people. Our avatar is so special to us. And when you can show up authentically, when you know from your heart what your purpose is, you authentically show up and connect because you want to help them, you want to reach them. So we work on really knowing who you are, how you're to serve, and implementing a strategy, whether it be through, Facebook Lives, workshops, podcast, being a speaker, being an author, writer, creating courses. That's not, all those things aren't for everybody. You don't have to do all of those things. So we always choose, I like the number 3 and 7. So we always choose 3 ways you want to market, 3 pain points that you want to, share, create your mission statement, but really begin your inner child work, knowing that whatever it is you do, you need to connect with yourself, forgive yourself for the past, and move forward. Because when you implement that process, you can really set yourself up to be able to move forward and create your plan, create your system to connect with. So a lot of the clients that I work with are leaving the medical field. It's weird. I work with a lot of nurses, and they want to leave that medical field and become a health coach of some sort, nutrition coach, a psychology coach. So maybe they're launching their own branding business. They might be doing a digital marketing service. So whatever it is they want, but creating that dream. So we have this really cool, I introduced the Aroma Freedom in it. So as a certified Aroma Freedom practitioner, we use Young Living essential oils, and we open up the sessions with a visualization, a practice, breath work. And we really set our perfect intention. We have this dream exercise where we think about where are we in 5 years from now. And we kind of get all of that bigger picture out. And then we work on, in the program itself, where do you see yourself? Are you a 6-figure entrepreneur? Let's picture yourself as a 6-figure entrepreneur. And then, what are you doing? Who are you working with? What's your team look like? Are you coaching one-to-one? You're doing, visualizing mapping out every single step, and then reverse engineering it. And then breaking that down into 3 steps, 3 goals, 3 SMART goals that you're going to take every single day. And I'm going to hold you accountable for it. We're going to hold you, the group's going to hold you accountable for it. You're going to do it. And, there's just the systems in place, that this specific strategy that's customized to you. If you want to block schedule, you block schedule. If you want to spend 2 hours on Saturday creating content, you do that. You put it in your calendar. If you just want to say on Tuesday, I'm not going to go live, I'm just going to do interviews. So some people don't want to be stuck in like, at 7 a.m. I'm doing this, 10 a.m., whatever. That's okay. Whatever works for you. It's your system. And because it's customized, people can flow through it so much easier, and people are at different levels. But when we come together in group coaching, it's amazing to hear, like you said, there's like-minded people, and they're like, oh, try this, and this might work. And it's really amazing because when I first started, I had no idea. I thought I had to do the YouTube, the Pinterest, all the things, all the social media things. You can't, whatever you devote to will grow, right? Whatever you spend time with grows. And I'm so busy. I was so busy in my beginning of my online career trying to show up at all these different places that I wasn't showing up well anywhere. So by narrowing it down and just picking my top 3 platforms has really made a huge difference. I love podcasts. I love interviews. I love summits. I can do these all day long. Facebook Live, all right, whatever. I might want to do that. I gave myself a challenge to go live for 30 days in a row. And I was like, one day I went live at 10:30 at night, and I was just like, I don't like to do this. I don't really like to do it. You're not engaging with people. You're just showing up, which is fantastic, but there's no engagement. There's no conversation. And I love hearing people's thoughts and opinions and how they do things. So that's what I teach in my program. So I have a 26-week program. I also have 12-week and a 6-week, depending on where the person's at. Depends on which program they go into. And then we do introduce the Oola framework, which is being balanced in 7 key areas. So that comes up depending on where you are, which program you choose. We work on the Oola life, which is being balanced in fitness, finance, family, field, which is your career, faith, friends, and fun. And it is scientifically proven that if you're not balanced, keyed in on those 7 key areas, it doesn't matter what you're doing, because your inner child, your inner self is going to know something's off.
Yeah.
And it's going to prevent you from moving forward, from scaling to 6 figures. So I always tell my clients, what's your goal? What's your money goal? 10,000 a month? Okay, write it down. If you do not speak it out and write it down, it's never going to happen. And I had one client, I love her to death. We ended up becoming good friends, but she was in my 6-week program. She had an organization business, and Crystal Navarro, if you guys want to put a plug in for her, if you're in Nevada and you need an organizer, she's fantastic. But she, didn't like Facebook, didn't like social media. She had an organization business. How do you do that online? I'm like, well, we can do it online if you want, but we honed in on it. She mapped out her 6 weeks. She has specific goals. Each week she had a specific goal. We reversed engineered it when we met weekly. We stayed on track, checked in with her once a week. She was the biggest naysayer. Like, talk about self-sabotage. This isn't going to work. I'm like, okay, do your aroma reset. Let's just like focus. Let's do your breath work. Let's write this down. She hit and exceeded every single goal. Every single time she would send me a message or a Marco Polo, so excited about achieving this goal. And just, you can just feel the excitement. And I'm like, that is amazing, because in my mindset, I had to really do extra mindset work on myself, because I'm thinking she's self-sabotaging her efforts. Like, she's not going to make her goals. And I'm like, no, she's going to make her goals, because she's speaking it out loud. But then she was turning it around and flipping it, because it had to work for her. She had to do this.
Yeah.
So that struggle she was able to overcome just by acknowledging it, speaking it out, writing it down. Some people don't like to write things down because they don't want other people to see it. So I tell them, fine, if you don't want to write it down, if you're not comfortable writing it down, ripping it up, speak it into like a voice recorder like Otter, and then play it back to yourself, because that has the same effect as it as well. So that connection. Being an author, I love to write. So I love the electronic system. I love the apps that we can use. Like in Oola, we have an app where you can record your daily action steps and then click a button. It's like playing a game. But there's still, for me, I still like to write things down. So I make my master list and then I convert it over just to check it off. But whatever works, because we're each unique. We each have our own modality that fits into who we are. And we don't have to do all the things. I like to say tunnel vision. When you want to work on something, if you want to see something grow, the best way for you to grow, if you're an entrepreneur, is to focus on your own signature program, because you're going to receive that money directly. You don't have to wait for a commission. You don't have to wait for affiliate marketing. And if you have other products, add that in and work that in after you've mastered your own program.
Well, and one of the things you were talking about Young Living, and so I have a rose oil. And
rose is beautiful.
It's the only rose that I've ever owned, simply because I just can't put myself out there into spending that kind of money, even though it is absolutely incredible, right? So there's very, very little left in here. But it was actually, I went to a Young Living event, and during that event, they were actually handing out different things. And it was like, I want the rose oil. I want the rose oil. And so we knew that they were going to be gifting one of the rose oils. And so it was like, I want the rose oil. And so the entire weekend was the rose oil is mine. The rose oil is mine. The rose oil is mine. And so while they were actually saying, okay, well, we're going to draw the name for this person or for this thing. And all I kept saying was repeating again the same thing. I want the rose oil. The rose oil is mine. I want the rose oil. The rose oil is mine. So it didn't matter what else they were drawing. And then they had, so then it was the rose oil, and I'm like, Rollie, 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 Rollie. And then they said my name, and I'm like, somebody took a picture of me, and like my face was like, all it's all contorted. It was like, oh my God, like what kind of face is that? But it was like, I had a back injury just recently before that. And so like moving was a little bit of a challenge, but my adrenaline had kicked in so much that I literally bounced up to the stage. Like I was bouncing to the stage. Somebody videotaped me going all the way up to the stage, and they're like, I thought you had a sore back. And I'm like, I do. I have like back, but I literally, it's not adrenaline. And so it was a 6-hour drive home. And so the entire drive home after the event, my girlfriend and I, who had traveled together, we kept opening up the rose oil, and we just kept inhaling it all the way home. And then I had my bath as soon as I got home. It was like 3:00 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm having my bath. I put my Epsom salts in, and then I put a couple of drops of the rose oil in the bath, and it was like, it was just so incredible. And like rose specifically has that uplifting aroma as well as that relaxation, right? So like it has like this double effect, and people are like, what do you mean? It's like, you just have to experience it, right? You just have to that part of things. But it was incredible. It was so incredible to be able to receive this. And so, like I said, I have a little tiny bit, and what I did with it was that I actually shared it with different clients and in different activities and things like that. So I used it in a lot of things. But the last couple of drops, I've like selfishly kept it. So it's on my desk. And I just open it up and I just smell it. And so the odd time I'll put it in something, but for the most part, it's that just being able to smell and having that aroma. And it stays on I have like this little mantle thing that I have on my desk of things that are important to me in front of my computer, because this is where I spend a lot of time. And so and that is one of the things that are on there, and it just stays there. It's there with my son's. My son made me a little mouse when he was a kid, knowing that I was afraid of mice. So he made me a little rock mouse so that it can remind me that it's not that scary, Mom. And so, and my kids are around the same age as yours. And so, but it's just incredible to be able to have that part. But it's all about being able to have that mindset and shifting and allowing things to be able to come true, is by having that desire and that motivation for us to be able to move through. And it's not that we don't necessarily not have the motivation, but it's the being able to remove those other barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Yeah, I love your story about the rose. I actually won a bottle of rose with a beautiful rose diffuser, when I first got into Young Living. It was just like so awesome. And I do savor it. And when I still have like a half a bottle, I do share it. But yeah, that one drop goes it just instantly has this effect on you, where it does calm you, but it just makes you feel like uplifting as well. When the bottles do get empty, I put them in distilled water and just like create like another it lasts so much longer. And then I save those empty bottles and keep them in my drawer for a scent. But yeah, that's a beautiful story. And yeah, the rocks and stuff, I used to paint rocks back in 2018, and we used to hide them. We used to make different animals out of them and flowers, and like put little sayings on them to encourage people. We'd hide them around the city of Rochester. So that's really cool that you have that just as a reminder, because if you think about a rock and how powerful it is and how it can stand the test of time. It's a great foundation piece. Yeah. When you have that rock foundation, that rock solid foundation, nothing can crumble it. Nothing can destroy it. And it's just a really powerful message to our minds, that visual that we need to remind ourselves that there are these different things that we can use to help us stay grounded. And, when we when we want something, we're going to go after it. So calling it out.
Yeah, so it's great. And so thank you so much for joining me today. And would love to have you come back on again. So feel free to come back if that is something that you would like to do. And for everyone else, I will see you guys next week and for another Chatting with Wisdom. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you. You too.